The ocean is a noisy room. We tend to think of it as the silent deep, but that is poetic nonsense. The ocean is full of screaming. Whales sing songs that travel for miles. Shrimp snap their claws like pistol shots. Submarines hum with mechanical hearts. Tectonic plates grind together like millstones. To a hydrophone and underwater microphone, the sea is a chaotic orchestra of clicks, whistles, and rumbles. But in the summer of 1997, the orchestra stopped playing and the audience held its breath. Something else made a noise. And this noise was not just loud. It was impossible. The listening network was called SOSUS. It was a relic of the Cold War. A web of sensors laid across the bottom of the Pacific Ocean by the U.S. Navy. Its original job was to track Soviet nuclear submarines. It was designed to hear the faint turn of a propeller from an ocean away. By the 90s, the Soviets were gone, so the scientists took over the headphones. They were listening for whale migrations or underwater volcanoes. They were bored. They were drinking coffee, watching lines on a green screen. Then, the sensors went red dot. It started low. An ultra-low frequency rumble. It vibrated the very water column itself. But unlike a geological event like an earthquake, which is jagged, rough, and chaotic, this sound had a shape. It had a curve. It rose in pitch. It started deep and swept upwards, a specific controlled modulation. In the world of acoustics, this is called a glissando. It is the signature of biology. It is the signature of a throat. The sound lasted for about 1 minute. That is a long time for a vocalization. But the duration wasn't the scary part. The scary part was the volume. The sensors picking this up were not close to each other. They were spread out over a range of 3,000 miles. That is the distance from New York to California. And every single sensor heard it loud and clear dot. To understand the scale of this, we have to look at the blue whale. The blue whale is the current champion of biological noise. It is the largest animal to ever exist that we know of. Its call can reach 188 decibels. It is louder than a jet engine taking off. If you were swimming next to a blue whale when it screamed, the vibration would vibrate your insides to jelly. But the sound in 1997, the sound they named the Bloop, made the blue whale sound like a whisper. The math was done quickly, and the math was terrifying. For a biological sound to travel that far, with that much intensity, the source had to be massive. Not just big like a whale. We are talking about something else entirely. If biological scaling laws hold true, the creature responsible for the bloop would have to be over 700 feet long. That is not an animal. That is a moving skyscraper. That is a biological island. The location of the sound added another layer of dread to the mystery. It was triangulated to a spot in the remote South Pacific, a place with a very specific reputation. Geographers call it Point Nemo. It is the pole of inaccessibility. It is the spot on the ocean farthest from any landmass. If you sail to Point Nemo, the closest human beings to you are the astronauts on the International Space Station orbiting overhead. It is a dead zone. The currents circle around it, trapping old water. There are very few nutrients. There are very few fish. It is a desert of water. Why would a Titan be there? Maybe because it is the only place on Earth where it can be alone. If a creature is that big, it doesn't need to hunt schools of tuna. It doesn't need to chase krill. It likely operates on a geological timescale. It might hibernate for centuries. It might filter the chemical soup of the deep. Or maybe it eats things we haven't found yet. The scientific community was rattled. For years, the official stance was origin unknown. That is science speak for we have no idea, and we are scared to guess. Then, years later, the explanation changed. NOAA released a statement saying the sound was consistent with an icequake. Specifically, a massive iceberg calving or cracking off the Antarctic shelf. The ice theory is safe. It is comfortable. It fits in the textbooks. Ice breaks, it makes a big boom. Case closed. But there are audiophiles, independent researchers, and naval experts who looked at the spectrograms, the visual pictures of the sound, and shook their heads. Ice cracks are percussive. They go bang. They drag. They grind. They do not modulate. They do not have that smooth, organic rise in frequency. A cracking glacier doesn't sound like a call. It sounds like destruction. The bloop sounded like a statement. If we entertain the organic monster theory, the biology becomes fascinating. A creature of that size would face immense problems. Gravity, even underwater, is a factor. To hold a body that big together, the skeleton, if it has one, would need to be made of materials denser than bone. Maybe cartilage reinforced with minerals we don't see in surface animals. Or maybe it has no skeleton at all. Maybe it is a giant invertebrate, a colossal slug or worm, held together by internal pressure. And the energy. To make a sound that travels across the Pacific, the lungs or the swim bladder, or the resonance chamber would have to be colossal. The air displacement alone would create a bubble the size of a stadium. When that bubble burst, it would send shockwaves through the water, capable of stunning anything within a 10-mile radius. Maybe that is how it feeds. It doesn't hunt. It just screams, and then eats the stunned ecosystem that floats into its mouth. The silence that followed is almost more disturbing than the noise itself. We haven't heard it again. Not like that. There have been other strange sounds. Julia, train, slow down. But the bloop stands alone as the loudest. This singular nature supports the hibernation theory. If it was a geological event, like an ice shelf breaking, it should happen often. Ice breaks all the time. But a creature waking up, rolling over, groaning, and then going back to sleep, that happens on a schedule we don't understand. Point Nemo is also used as a graveyard for spaceships. When satellites die, space agencies crash them there because it is so far from people. The ocean floor at Point Nemo is littered with the titanium skeletons of dead satellites and space stations. It is a junk pile of human technology. It is a poetic image, the debris of our space age raining down on the roof of an ancient, sleeping god. There is an instinctual fear of the deep that humans carry. It is hardwired into our DNA. We are land apes. We are not meant to be in the black water. When we hear a sound like the bloop, it triggers a primal alarm. It reminds us that we are not the landlords of this planet. We are the tenants living in the attic. The basement belongs to things we cannot control. The skeptics will always point to the ice. They will say the frequency modulation was just a quirk of the acoustics, a trick of the distance. And they might be right. Science is about probability. It is more probable that a glacier cracked than a Godzilla-sized organism exists. But probability is not certainty. The coelacanth was probable to be extinct until it wasn't. The giant squid was a myth until it wasn't. The ocean covers 70% of the planet. We have mapped the surface of Mars better than we have mapped our own ocean floor. We know the shape of the bottom, but we don't know the life of the bottom. A creature that is mostly water, that has no bones to fossilize, that lives in the deepest trenches and only speaks once every 50 years? It could easily hide from us. It doesn't need to hide, really. We just aren't looking in the right place or listening at the right time. The recording is still available. You can listen to it. It has been sped up by the scientists to be audible to human ears. At normal speed, it is a low, thrumming vibration that you would feel in your chest more than hear with your ears. But sped up, it sounds wet. It sounds heavy. It sounds like a bubble rising from the throat of the abyss. So, the question remains, was it the ice shelf shattering, a geological death rattle? Or was it a yawn? Was it a lonely call sent out into the void, checking to see if there was anyone else out there big enough to answer? The sensors are still listening. The green lines are still scrolling on the screens in the quiet rooms of naval intelligence. The ocean is screaming, clicking, and humming. But everyone is waiting for the big one. Everyone is waiting for the king to speak again. The bloop is not just a sound file. It is a boundary line. On one side is the world we understand, the world of physics and ice and rock. On the other side is the possibility that monsters are real, and they are sleeping right beneath our boats. And sometimes, just sometimes, the boundary line makes a noise.